Just keep talking for a minute. He knows not what he does.
I, I tell you, it's pretty disastrous.
Earlier I got a phone call from both you and the War Hamster. I was unable to answer them, so I have no clue what you guys are going to tell me. Do we have War Hamster tonight?
Do we have what?
War Hamster.
Yes, we do. He's going to be a few minutes late.
Okay. Yeah, I've had my own fun stuff in my life going on, so I'm doing a number of things, including desperately trying to finish the index of my new book. The book should
Wait a minute,
be out
you're
next
writing
week or
books
two.
again?
Well, I'm always writing. Writing is my true love. Hanging out with Alan, that's just something I do for a sidekick,
Yeah.
kick, sidekick, kick. But the true love is I love to write. Radio and all other stuff just is additional stuff. I have written 9 books that have been published. I've written many more than that, but not all of them are out there in print. I have 13 novels actually that I tried to get published through publishing houses. Didn't quite get there yet, but I'm working on one of them to retry. But for the nonfiction, my Constitution stuff, I self-publish all of that. But anyway, good to see you guys. He's trying to figure out why he doesn't have background, so I guess I open the show. I am Mr. Constitution, Douglas V. Gibbs. Digga Dan came before us. Is that the name of the show? Yeah, it was interesting image for him there, and apparently he's a fan of the program. He said so at the end, and he gets to listen. He knew exactly who I was when my image appeared, so I guess he's a fan, and so I didn't know Digga Dan was such a fan. But it sounds like I'm trying to rhyme.
Of course, but yeah. Anyway,
I still can't figure it out, huh?
No, because it's
It don't like you. You made somebody mad.
No kidding. Wait a minute. What happened again? It went away.
Yeah, and I've got the virtual background. I don't have my green screen up. So every once in a while, if I duck down or something like that, you'll see my cowboy hat appear behind me. I was doing it earlier. Now I don't see it. But anyway.
The problem is with mine, for some reason, and I can't change it. I have a green screen and I don't have it anymore, so I can't click out of it. So I'm
can't click out of your green screen.
Yeah.
And you don't have your virtual
green
screen going.
And I don't know how to add an image. Wait a minute.
Yeah, well, you need
Wait a minute. We might.
I like my green screen. I use my green screen, but it's a pain in the rear to put up because I'm in this little 9x9 prison called my office, and it's not really designed for all of that jazz. So when I can use a virtual green screen, I'm excited because that means I'm not like propping my green screen up by with books on one end and a little hook on the other and little clips over here. And you vanished.
Yeah, I know. I'll deal with this later. So we're just gonna go blur. All right. Yeah. I don't know if we're recording because.
Yeah. Well, I don't. We never did do the record thing, and we'll try.
Well, I sent a request to the host, and I have not received back. So I'm going to have to talk to them about this because this is.
Well, if you go to more, it should be an option for record on this computer.
There is, but it's the host that controls it, and that's Pam. And
so
Pam's
when you
not
go
here.
to hit it, it doesn't want to play nice. Boy, we're having all kinds of technical fun here. So
let's get going. Let's get going.
Yeah, let's just get going. So I'm assuming you've got all kinds of interesting whatchamacallit news or whatever.
Well, let's begin officially, properly. Alan Myers here. I am. This is another episode of For the Republic. Welcome to Dougie Gibbs, Mr. Constitution. Look at that. He's already hitting the sauce. Can't believe it. You haven't even started. Go ahead. Show him what you're drinking.
Dr. Pepper and pistachios. Yeah, thank you.
That's the
olives are not here today, though. So
what happened to olives?
Pistachios ready to roll. So.
Oh, no. Does Popeye know?
I was working on a book, forgot about the olives.
Does Popeye know olives not here? Oh no, that's sad. Okay, wackadoodle news, of course. This is going to be good for you because you are Mr. Constitution, right?
That's what they say.
Well, I believe it. And let me get rid of that. Get rid of that. Okay, here we go. I got so many of these. This came up as, and I think some of this is kind of interesting to know. And there's another area I'd like to work with you and Brady, and that we only mention every once in a while, but we don't really talk about it. And that is, we need to talk about the Articles of Confederation. Because if we don't understand the articles, then we're not going to understand why they found them so weak and what they were trying to strengthen in a federal, not national government. What do you think?
I think that's a legitimate request.
Okay.
And it's interesting too, because some of the language in the articles, so, your Hamiltonians out there love to play games with some of the language, so we may have some fun with that too.
Okay, here we go. So this is your test. I know the answers because I'm looking at them, so that wouldn't be fair for me to answer. You ready? And this is supposed to be a test on American history, Revolutionary War time. What year did the American Revolution begin?
Lexington Green, 1775.
Ah, damn. Okay. Who was the primary author of the Declaration of Independence?
Jefferson.
See, I don't even have to give you the four options. Which battle is commonly referred to as the start of the American Revolution War?
Lexington. They'll say Lexington and Concord, but that's actually two battles. It's Lexington, Lexington Green.
Which battle?
Mm-hmm. No, it was a battle at Lexington on Lexington Green.
April 19th, 1775.
Oh, you're asking for the year too? Or I mean the month?
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna.
I knew it was in April. I didn't remember the day. April 19th.
I'm not even going to ask you, the date on the Declaration of Independence. That's ridiculous. This is important. Which country was first to recognize the United States as an independent nation?
France.
Russia. 1778. Hey, is the hamster in the house?
I am here.
Yeah, I thought I heard some squeaky wheel turning there.
Yeah, snuck in. Okay, we're going to keep going. Here we go. Welcome.
Hey, good night, gentlemen. I had to shovel some snow.
But he did it in open-toe shoes and shorts, but hey.
And you're looking for sympathy? Okay, got it. This one is the fact that this question is in the group of, do you know this? Who was appointed commander-in-chief of the Continental Army?
Washington.
Thank you. Okay, here we go. This one's tough. What year was the Treaty of Paris?
1783. If you talk about the second one that ended the Revolutionary War, there was another treaty called the Treaty of Paris in 1763 that ended the French and Indian War.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about that one.
There was another treaty called the Treaty of Paris in 1763 that ended the French and Indian War.
Yeah, well.
Did I just hear myself?
What was that?
That was me trying to log into the D Live without muting it first. That's all my fault.
Okay, good. I thought we had another gremlin. Okay.
Yeah, I thought I was talking to myself. I'm like, wow, we got two of me on the show now. It's really going to get interesting.
Which event?
Maybe you find someone who actually agrees with you.
No, that ain't going to happen. Which event was a response to the Tea Act imposed by Britain?
Tea Party. Boston Tea Party.
And no tea was served, okay? This is, you can boo on the answer to this one. Who was the first Secretary of Treasury?
Hamilton.
Boo!
Thank you. What year was the Constitution written?
1787.
What was the last major battle of the war?
The last major battle was the Siege of Yorktown.
Beautiful.
There were two battles after that, Blue Lakes and Arkansas Post.
Who's known as the father of the Constitution?
James Madison.
Madison.
Fourth President of the United States. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is another stupid question. The Articles of Confederation were the first governing document of the U.S. It was replaced by. Okay, that's so stupid. It's not even funny. Which amendment? This is tough. Think about this. Which amendment guarantees freedom of speech, religion, and the press?
That was my
First Amendment. It doesn't guarantee anything. It enumerates those rights.
I know.
Hey, Doug, was it the first proposed amendment?
No, it was the third proposed amendment.
Thank you.
It was just the first one accepted. Who said, "Give me liberty or give me death"?
Patrick Henry.
See, I don't understand why he said that. I would have thought he would have said, "Give me liberty or I'll give you death."
Well, it's funny because he was sick of the complacent appeasement that the Virginia delegation there at the Virginia Convention kept wanting to do. And he's like, guys, the war's already started. You keep wanting to appease. They're on their way.
Yeah.
What, are you going to wait until we're on our faces and they've taken our guns from us before you get upset here?
Who wrote Common Sense?
Thomas
Thomas
Paine.
Paine.
Real quick, Alan, are you recording?
I tried, but Pam didn't show up to give me the click.
Pam said all three of us have permission, but I had good luck dragging the video 2 weeks ago off of the PSP Rumble feed, so I can do that from the beginning.
Well, should I hit record on this computer again?
Go ahead and do it just in case.
Well, then I'm now recording. All right. Way to go.
So in other words, all of those things I just answered correctly were not recorded.
No, you know what? They're in our minds. Okay.
Well, Doug, I'll pull it off. I'll pull it off from the top of the hour.
Yeah.
Off the,
no, I'm joking around. I really don't care. But anyway, go ahead.
Hey, I got Thomas Paine before you did.
Which colony was the first to instruct its delegates to vote for independence from Britain?
It was not Virginia. It was Rhode Island. What? No, it was the adopted.
No.
It was Rhode Island. Rhode Island was the first with the Declaration and the last with the Constitution, if I remember properly.
That's where I was.
This was to first colony to instruct the delegates to vote.
Probably Massachusetts.
Close, Virginia.
Once I said it wasn't Virginia, so I got that dead wrong.
I was thinking, well, Rhode Island was the first one to, okay.
But, well, the reason I said Virginia is because they were very slow and deliberate, as they should be.
Yeah.
They were never quick. The Virginia politicians of the day were very deliberate, and I think was probably a good thing, but they were not rash and they didn't react quickly.
Well, and everybody was kind of seeing what was going on with Massachusetts was Massachusetts. Massachusetts was causing all this. Everything was going on in Massachusetts. The question wasn't at first whether or not to declare independence. It was, are we going to stand with Massachusetts or not? And eventually the idea was, well, if Massachusetts fall, we're next.
Who was the first person to sign the Declaration of Independence?
John Hancock. Well,
no, he's the last.
No, he signed it first because he was president of the Continental Congress.
Well, the first Declaration of Independence, the original, not the one
signed by him and
actually it's not
Thompson.
even signed. It's the words, the names are printed. John Hancock and of course
Charles Thompson.
Yes, the Secretary of the Congress,
right?
Charles Thompson. All right, we're done with that.
Charles Thompson, by the way, was good friends with Jefferson too. They wrote letters to each other quite a bit.
Quite the brave man.
Yeah, I've got a copy of a letter between them in which Jefferson writes in all caps, "I am a real Christian."
Have I ever talked about EVs on this program?
Probably.
Just a few times, and if you haven't, I brought them up.
Well, apparently, a reporter was stranded in an EV at midnight.
Oh, EV, like an electric vehicle. I thought you meant emoji violators. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not emotional violators. No.
Not electoral votes.
Not electoral votes. And this person was stranded out there. The battery would only, they were trying to drive back to Seattle, didn't make it. There was a plug-in station nearby, but it was for Teslas. The driver wasn't driving a Tesla, didn't have a standard EV plug. So the closest compatible was like 30 miles away and didn't make it. The point is, did I mention it was pitch black and it was about 30 degrees outside? Once again, and what this driver found out is the temperatures drop, the performance of these vehicles don't hold up. Now, do you know anybody with an EV that's having problems?
I know lots of people with EVs, but they all live in San Diego County, so they're not having problems.
Okay. Well, guess who is having problems? Asheville in North Carolina. They shelled out millions of dollars for 5 buses. 3 of them aren't working. And people are talking about it.
One of them, Bill, about that.
One of them has a door that doesn't work. And because the company that made them, Proterra, is going through bankruptcy, it did apparently get recently purchased, but it's still not making parts. For that one to work, they'd have to get a custom-made door. This is what it cost Asheville. Each bus cost at least $616,000. They needed to spend another $200,000 for installation of a charger. $200,000. So just to get the vehicle, we're at $816,000. To lease the batteries for the buses, you don't get to own them; you lease them. That's $118,000, and then to charge them, that's $45,000. So the total bill for first year, $979,000. And with the 2 remaining ones that are working, because the other ones are having software glitches or whatever, they can only go in the winter, they can only go about 78 miles before having to return to the shop and charge for hours. That just doesn't seem like a great use of technology. What do you think?
Well, in my case, what the left wants is for us to go completely electric for everything. And I remember as a child this cute little saying that my parents used to say that I have carried with me my entire life. And by the way, it's also good economic sense. You don't put all your eggs in one basket.
There you go. Especially when the basket doesn't always work because of the snow and the cloud cover.
Well, especially when the basket has to be plugged in, and if there's no plug, you're screwed. Yeah.
Right. This one is kind of interesting.
Well, you didn't ask Brady what he thought.
Oh, well, I figure he would pop in. Hamster, what's going on?
Well,
how you doing?
Definitely. I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity, because I've got something about electronic buses that I brought with me. And I'm just serendipitously, you brought it up.
Okay.
So here's an article from this week that I brought to share tonight.
The fires.
The 3rd electric bus in London catches fire in a month. So an electric bus has caught fire in London, making it the 3rd to burst into flames in the capital just this month. The firefighters tackled the flames, et cetera, et cetera. You know, what's funny is they actually don't have the ability to fight the fire. What they can only do is minimize the toxic.
Yeah, because you can't throw water on it.
But it's 3 electric buses in London in 1 month. So you figure that's 36 a year at the price. Let's say Alan's price is correct at about $1 million a bus. That's $36 million a year in unusable buses, not to mention how many dead Londonites. Yeah, so I think this might be a little problematic, and we might want to rethink it.
Yeah, your tax dollars hard at work.
Yeah, it's at some point tonight. I'm hoping Alan gives me 5 minutes, and when he says, "Brady, did you bring anything else to share?" Because I did, and it's on the same topic. It's on the same topic.
Well, we got a couple of words from Thumper. Comb your hair, dude. No, not tonight. Sorry. And insurance companies are starting to not insure EVs.
Yeah, I covered that like 3 weeks ago on the show, Alan, and it's right now the estimate.
Well,
Uh,
I'm just saying, we got this from Thumper, and I wanted it. I wanted to give him a little airtime.
but he,
So,
but he's saying Thumper's saying they're not even covering them at all because what I said is that it's now about twice as expensive to cover an electronic EV as it is a gas guzzler, and it cracks me up because you guys have heard me talk about my sister, who's wonderful in every way, shape, or form, except for the fact that she's woke. And when she took us to the airport a few weeks back, she spent like 20 minutes telling us how wonderful her Tesla is. And I'm just sitting there biting my lip the entire time with all these statistics and articles.
And I'm sure deep down you're kind of hoping that she has this car fire, of course, survives, and then goes, "What happened?"
Well, yeah, I'm checking in here. Is she putting pennies away for that new battery when she needs it?
She's the exception to the rule. Everything about her Tesla has worked out perfectly so far, but she never has to commute more than 10 miles. So,
well, there's that. Yeah.
She's the rare exception.
Okay. Well, the whole deal on the electric vehicles, I 30 years in the insurance business, agency owner, the whole works. Insurance companies are no longer very anxious about writing policies on EVs. A lot of companies have stopped writing them completely because not only does the car is the car completely destroyed in a battery fire, you can't put the battery fire out, and if there's any cars next to it, you have that liability as well.
It was collapsing. So where is that money going then?
Where's that coming from? Sorry about the echo. That may have come from me.
Okay.
My apologies.
Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing.
The insurance companies, it's not only the vehicle is destroyed, but if you're in a parking lot with 3 or 4 other cars, you're going to probably scorch, let's say at least 3 other cars, the one in front of you and the 2 on either side.
And the last time I checked, the insurance companies are not real fond of putting out a lot of money.
No, they're not, because they're losing money as it is right now because they can't even repair a car with a dented fender for 6 months. And so they're paying for, rental cars and loss of use, blah, 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 blah. And then if your Tesla or your EV should happen to catch fire inside a parking garage, there's also structural damage to the parking garage because they burn so hot, and you can't put them out. The only thing they can do is just pour water on it, keep it cooled off. And so you've got structural damage as well if it happens inside of a parking garage.
Well, as long as we're not using child labor to produce the batteries in the first place, I guess it's probably okay.
We're not. We're using child labor to dig this stuff out of the ground.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that sounds better.
Yeah.
That's always better, no shoes, no shirt.
That was at the Temple
shorts.
of Doom, right?
Yeah.
That was going, okay.
Yeah. So I put out something on social media last week when I talked about everything we're talking, the insurance costs going up for EVs, et cetera. And somebody informed me that he goes, look, I know a guy who's figured out how to rebuild these batteries. He's got like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stockpile. Apparently he can actually rebuild the batteries for a few $1,000, but the manufacturers can't do it. So I don't know. Once again, the consumers are speaking. How many different was it Ford that decided to drop their F-150 vehicle?
All the companies. I read an article just this past week. All the companies are selling off their EVs that they've got in stock. They've reduced the prices on them, and they're also rolling back production a lot.
Yeah, so I'm thinking here. So we have a political push to go completely electric, laws in place that requires you to insure your vehicle, and insurance companies that won't insure any of them eventually. Yeah, what could go wrong?
Well, see, you guys I think you're missing the big picture. So let me help you get some clarity.
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Enlighten us, Alan.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh, that's right. This is my show. See, we're going EV. You got to go EV because that's the only way to go. We got to go green. but they're not very reliable. They're horrible in winter, and you can't get insurance on them. That means you will accept not driving, because in
Right.
California,
It's
if
to
you
get you
don't
out of
have
your
insurance, you cannot drive. Which
But it's okay
means
because they're going to put you in a 5-minute or 15-minute city, right?
15, which means you will embrace the concept of being put in a 15-minute city without complaining, because you don't have a vehicle to drive because you have to be green.
You could
Might
always
be
take
onto
the
something.
electric bus. Oh, wait a minute.
Wait a minute, it only goes 78 miles, so that ain't getting you.
Well, when it's not catching on fire.
Yes.
Well, see,
Or if they can get the door open.
that's one of the problems with the one. I mean, we've done this before. We talked about the guy who's brand new, virtually brand new EV, and he gets the message from the dashboard, pull over, running out of power, or whatever. And because everything is electric, he can't open the door. He's stuck in the car. And there's supposed to be an escape thing, but that wasn't working. And what happens if, at the moment that happens, the battery just starts to flame? Or because it's a dark road and you can't move and you have no lights because there's no flashers because you have no power, and somebody plows into the back of you.
That's when you get one of these. And you break the window out of it.
My favorite little side note on this topic was Biden was out there talking to the UAW, the union, and of course they endorsed Biden again, even though the whole push for EVs, none of the EV makers they're very anti-union. They cost UAW jobs, but of course the president of the UAW is 100% behind the Democrat Party, because they want to create more good little socialist soldiers. That was entertaining as all hell. Listening to, if you go to Twitter, the UAW president, when he endorsed Biden, there's probably tens of thousands, or I don't know how many it was. I looked through a lot of the replies from UAW workers. Oh, they're furious. They can't stand it. They're ticked off as all hell. That was some of the funniest Twitter I've read all year.
Well, we're going to move on from that exciting topic, EV, and you may have heard this. This is kind of interesting. That's why it's in Wackadoodle. LA Times, that great newspaper, apparently is having a layoff that will impact up to 115 staffers. They got like a 30-day layoff process. A lot of the people, they're not happy. One person covering the Orange County area said, one day you're covering the CSU strike, and in the pouring rain, the next day, you've been served a layoff notice. Another staffer who was laid off while on a work trip posted about having to message her editor to confirm that management wouldn't cancel her company credit card before she got home. Had you guys heard anything about this? And any comments?
So I was talking to a lefty the other day, and they about this, and they said, well, it's because everybody reads their news online. It couldn't possibly because they're left wing and nobody wants to read that crap. And my response was, well, it's funny because the Epic Times does great. Just saying.
Brady?
I've got nothing to add.
Okay.
Have
you seen in the news this last week, you know who is laying off all its writers? National Geographic. National Geographic. It's going to be all remote. And who owns and controls National Geographic? Disney. So it's all going to be piecemeal work.
Well, you won't need writers anymore anyway, because all you got to do is tell AI to write an article.
And it apparently won't be physical print anymore. This is just terrible.
Are you telling me the National Geographic, they used to show these indigenous people with their shirts off, that I grew up thinking was somewhat interesting to look at? Those are gone forever?
No, the pictures will be there. You'll just have to do it online.
That's
Yeah,
just,
sort of like the rest of your porn.
Yeah. I'm only going to touch on this briefly because we've covered so much EV. Ford
yeah,
apparently on
Should
its
know better to put us together in one show. I'm sorry.
Dunham?
Go ahead.
the Ford's F-150 Lightning. They have fired 70% of the EV workers. They're going to discontinue because they're losing $36,000 per vehicle. What, you can't stay in business if you're losing $36,000 or $34,000 on a vehicle? But yeah, they're going to get rid of like 1,400 workers. Way to go, EV.
Yeah, Utopia is shaping together nicely. Nobody's going to be working, but Utopia is shaping together nicely.
But there is one other problem with that. Excuse me. And that is there are a number of companies who provided materials, items for the F-150. Well, they geared up because they thought, okay, Ford's going big on the EV Lightning. Well, guess what? It's not. So now these companies who geared up aren't needed anymore. So there's a downline problem. You know how I like to deal with climate education? Apparently, there's a satellite out there. Oh, thank goodness, a satellite. And it has been able to catch the world's worst polluters because from space, it's able to identify the 1,300 largest methane producing sites on the planet. And this has been done by an environmental intelligence company called Kairos, something like that. And this is really important because we're finding out who is leaking methane into our atmosphere. And we're looking at places like India, Russia, Australia, United States, etc. And we have to do this because methane is one of those greenhouse gases, right? And it may stay in the atmosphere up to a decade. But it has an intense effect. This is according to NASA. Remember, folks, that, and apparently, according to this article, over 150, think about this phrase, world governments, not national governments, not federal governments, world governments. They've joined the Global Methane Pledge to cut methane output by 30% by 2030. Well, for those who don't know this, methane is measured at approximately 1.9 parts per million. Let's say it's 2. That number is 0.0002%, or 0.02%. And this is why we're warm. This shows the absolute craziness of what we're being pushed on. Last thing, and Brady, you already touched about.
I wanted to ask you about that satellite that can catch all the bad guys who are putting all the pollutants in the air, the methane and all that.
Methane, yeah.
Has the satellite been weaponized? Can it be like GoldenEye so they can also zap them?
They didn't mention that in the article.
See, the authoritarians are falling behind. They got to keep up with the James Bond bad guys.
Yeah, I was thinking Moonraker immediately, Doug. So yeah, we're on the same page.
Same paragraph. I won't touch on this too much other than I also had an article about the electric vehicle fiasco that has become dangerous. And yes, it's about London. And so that, yeah, we're talking about buses, and the mayor of London had promised to be, zero emission. But they've had to withdraw an entire fleet of 380 buses. They're out of service. So welcome to the end of Wackadoodle News. Now, I know you gentlemen have some fun things to talk about.
Well, I just thought it was funny because what came to mind out of this is, in the private industries, one of the things that the corporations and the free market does is something called planned obsolescence. In other words, they make it so that things break down so that you have to buy more. Government has upped the ante on that. They have unplanned obsolescence, which is really interesting.
Which is really hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brady, you and the war hamster. Give me a topic. What do you want to chat about?
I'd like to stay on the green scam, if you don't mind, since it's one of our favorite topics on
the
this
green
show.
Scam.
Yeah. So
Wait a minute. Are you saying green is really not a color?
No, I actually believe that green is a color.
Okay. I'll take it.
I'm not.
I'm wearing green.
Not that. I am. My heresy only goes so far.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, that's a good thing because I got green eyes. I was nervous there. I thought I had no eyes.
I got kaleidoscope eyes. They're sometimes green, but no, I will not dispute Roy G. Biv. So.
All right, let's hear it.
Well, there's a fascinating report that just came out this week, and I'm just going to have to share this screen with you to do it justice.
Please do.
And it is titled, you can see this now?
Yeah.
This is from a group called Net Zero Watch. And obviously we know who Net Zero is. These are these people that think that if we basically we can just change our entire economy and entire system of producing power and everything that powers the economy to get down to zero emissions for whatever reason, that's a good idea. They can't really justify the reasons for it, but this report says they really can't justify the math or the economics. And what this report does is it really analyzes their assumptions.
Okay.
And I'm just going to scroll down. This is by a guy out by the name Andrew Montford. This is he's out of England.
Wait. Go back to the front page a bit. Okay. Now just scroll up a little bit. Just scroll up a little bit more.
As far as I can scroll, my friend.
No, you can roll it. When you're going from screen to screen, I just want you to go a little further.
I really can't.
Okay, we'll go to the next screen.
Okay, I'm going down.
Oh, stop there. See, that's what I'm talking about. That's scrolling to me.
Oh, you said scroll down instead of scroll up. Yeah, it's the up down thing where you got confused.
Oh, well, I'm watching the thing go up, so I'm figuring you're scrolling up. Anyway, take a look at that picture. This person is out in nature. You have what would appear to be an unpaved, maybe dirt road. You got a bird or two.
No, they're all there.
Well,
yeah, I was thinking he was from the government. He's counting how many dead birds are along the road.
But
yeah, birds are all gone.
Think about this scene without those turbines. It's beautiful. But with them, to me, it's ugly.
Well, it's dystopian.
It's to me, it's a powerful picture because not only do you have them in the forefront, look into the background. They're out on the skyline. This is just, it's just sad. And people want to see this.
Yeah, just drive out to Palm Springs if you want to see that even more.
All right, keep scrolling down.
Well, you got some more lovely pictures for you, Alan.
Thank you.
Now they're out in the ocean, so instead of surfers and scuba divers, we've got wind turbines. So the artwork's great, but I didn't bring it up for the artwork. This is actually lovely too. Solar farms.
Now, can you go back for that for a minute? Thank you. Can you convert that so you can also get a suntan?
I think you definitely get a sunburn.
Okay. Well, I just,
Yeah, well, I wish I'd saved the picture because I thought it was really funny when it snowed and you saw all these solar panels covered with snow and they just don't work very well.
Well, Texas found that out. I think it was the winter of 2020, 2021, and there was a big snow dump, which meant the panels were covered in snow. It was so cold, the turbines froze. which meant if they did not have the regular sources of energy, they would have had none.
And if you remember last week, Alan, I brought this story about how all the huge report that England did about how to get to net zero was relying upon 1 year of wind, which was one of the windiest years in history, and the math doesn't work with normal wind. And that's what this report's all about. It's about really bad math. Same concept.
Keep going.
Okay, so here's the summary here. It says a recent Royal Society report claimed the electricity grid could be decarbonized without materially raising the cost per unit of electricity delivered. The annual cost would be of the order of 30 billion pounds. So what basically $50 billion, give or take the exchange rate most years, or the 20-year average. So here's the problem with the assumptions. They included a 60% reduction in offshore wind capital cost. Ain't going to happen. Their assumed a 70% reduction in offshore wind operating costs, a 50% increase in offshore wind output.
Okay, stop there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I got it. So we have less cost to build, over 50%, a huge reduction in what it costs to operate, and with that, you're going to get a 50% increase in output.
Yeah, and those reductions and those changes have to be done in the next 2 years to hit the.
And you use the word assume. So these are all assumptions.
Yeah, but these are the projections and their models that they use to change the entire global economy. To actually, they have to make these changes in the next 2 years to hit their 2050 goals, which they're basically going to bankrupt the entire civilized world to accomplish.
Maybe that's part of the goal.
Yeah, it ain't going to happen. But there's more. They have to.
It sounds like an infomercial, but there's more.
They have to have a 30% reduction in solar capex, a 70% reduction in solar opex, which is capital expenditures and operating expenditures. So
they can't even spell it out.
Well, those are industry terms. OPEX and CAPEX are fine. I'm not going to quibble with that. That works in my world. But the point is they have to reduce a third and 70% of their expenditures in the next 2 years, somehow magically. These are the studies or the models that the people that are making policies are using to map out the next 25 years of global expenditures, and they're based on pie in the sky. You may as well be counting unicorn farts at this point. They also require a 90% reduction in, I don't even want to know how to say this word, electrolyzer capex, capital expenditures, 45% increase in efficiency. They're going to just sum it out of nowhere. A 60%, so it gets funny. You go down to the charts. And if you look at this arrow going up is reality. This stable line is what they're projecting over the next, not based in reality. There's more of this. Up here, this is the UK offshore wind operation expenditures. Reality is up here. I'm sorry, the reality is up here at 150. Yeah. What they're marketing is 1/3 the cost.
Easy, no problem.
It makes all sense in the world. They are exactly right when you remember that these are the same people who claim that men can get pregnant.
Yeah, thank you. And it's the exact same religion, the cult of wokeness. These are. I'm going to put this. I'm going to put the link to this in the chat here when I get done.
Please do.
But there's 5 different scenarios. The one on the far right is reality, and the one on the left is what they're modeling. And you see the numbers on the right are about 3 times greater than the numbers on the left. None of it works.
You saw the interesting coincidence there.
And I'm just going to which one is that?
Their numbers were on the left and reality was on the right, but I'm sorry, I digress. Go ahead.
That's funny.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Brady. Thank you.
I was going to read the summary because it kind of sums that up.
Conclusion?
There we go. The Royal Society's report appears to contain a significant error, you think, in that it used an incorrect seasonal demand curve, which led to it understating the costs. This alone should lead to the report's withdrawal. That's very subtly stated. The report also used a demand assumption that was fixed with respect to temperature and extremely low, further understating the costs. The nature of the assumption, in one respect ambitious and another unrealistic, was not explained to the readers. So the reason this is important is they will take these studies time after time after time, dumb them down to create a political report that our policymakers use to change the freaking world. This is not okay. When you start looking into the nuts and bolts of the reports, they don't stand up for more than like 5 minutes of scrutiny. And yet the cult of climate is trying to change the very nature of how we govern ourselves, of how our economy works, and how we live our lives. This is problematic, to say the least.
What we need to do, what we really need to do. Wait a minute.
Remember,
go
the
ahead.
anti-plastic straw cult began based on a child's report. So just, remember, these people don't care what the truth is, don't care what the facts are. All they care about is saying that it's possible for them to get to their goal. And they will twist and they will turn everything they can to do it. So then the big question is, so what happens when suddenly everybody's in their 15-minute city and there's no signal for their devices, there's no electricity, but don't worry, the robot masters, oh, wait a second, they're not working. What happens then?
Well, if you all would just relax and get out of the paranoia in your head and just listen to the experts. Okay, just listen to the experts. They will tell you true. Paranoia. Okay, I'll stop doing that. Hey, anything going on in the chat?
Well, you know what expert where that comes from, right? An X is a has been, a spurt is a drip. So
Okay.
There you go. No, the chat room, actually, I was getting a kick out of it because we were talking about when we were talking about the EVs catching fire. We were getting all kinds of fun, fiery imagery, little GIFs and images in the chat room that I thought was hilarious. I can't access them now, but they were great.
Did we have any dancing cockroaches around the fire?
No, but we did have a couple of those pop up when I was answering questions that was being thrown at me regarding history.
Right. Well, thank you, Brady, for that EV update. Very nice. Well, EV, electrical power, and how we're all going to be saved by the green. Thank you, Brady.
My pleasure.
Doug, you got anything on your mind right now?
Well, I always have something on my mind.
Anything that we can talk about?
Well, it's funny because what we talked about yesterday on KMET, one of them.
Wait a minute. The full name. Come on.
That radio show on Saturdays from 1 to 3 on KMET.
Channel?
Mine. All right, fine. I'm being difficult. It's 1490 AM, right, in Marbury versus Madison. John Marshall wrote that if a law is not constitutional, it's not a law. What that means is if a power is not delegated to the United States government by the United States Constitution, if the issue does not appear as granted in this case to the federal government, then they can't do it. And the states who sent their delegates to write this Constitution in the first place at the Constitutional Convention of 1787, they are the parents here, and they are the final arbiters of the Constitution. They are the power higher than the Supreme Court of the United States, because they are the final arbiters of the Constitution, because they wrote it. They are the parties of that contract. And if they believe that the federal government is operating in a manner or acting in a manner or ruling in a manner that is outside the powers given to that said government, they can nullify. In other words, say, you know what? That is not legal. We're not going to follow it. Stick it. States can do that. In Jefferson's draft of the Kentucky resolutions, he says that nullification is the right remedy. I had a constitutionalist one time argue with me about Madison's take on it. Madison supported nullification, and it was brought up that Madison defended the federal government when it came to the nullification crisis in the 1830s, when South Carolina rejected a tariff that was put out by the federal government. And my response was, Madison was not saying nullification was bad. He was saying that South Carolina in that instance was bad because their nullification was wrong, because tariffs is something that's authorized to the federal government. They can tax in that manner. So, but nullification ultimately is the states exercising their sovereignty and saying, you know what, we wrote this thing, we created you, you're acting outside the law, and I don't care what your court says, federal government, your court was wrong, and we're going to nullify this order. We're going to keep putting out all the razor wire we want. Besides, the courts never actually told them they couldn't anyway. What has happened, what is happening, what is interesting is A, the Border Patrol now is siding with the state, and B, the administration is backing down. I love nullification. When a state is willing to stand up to the bully, poke him in the chest and say, no, we created you, you dummy, they back down. And I'm excited about what's going on.
How many states are back in Texas?
25 states. That makes 26 states in total that are banding together, 26 versus 24. That does not mean that the other 24 are against. It's just they haven't necessarily jumped on board. It doesn't kind of feel like there's like this cold civil war kind of going on, and I kind of like it. I think it's high time that the states reassert their position as the parents over the federal government, their position as the sovereign states who created that federal government and who are the final arbiters of the Constitution. I'm very, very, very jazzed that the states are following, and Dee Landry put it in the chat room, 10th Amendment. If it's not given to the federal government and it's not prohibited to states, it's a state authority, and they can nullify.
Or the people.
And the people. And here's the thing. It goes back to what I said earlier. The states are the parents. They originally set up this federal republic so they could have oversight over this monster. A lot of that oversight's been taken away. 17th Amendment, Reynolds v. Sims, there's a whole bunch of other things that has contributed to the removal of oversight by the states over this federal government. Now that they are willing to stand tall and nullify, I'm waiting for the next hammers to start to drop, and I'm more than happy to try to get involved in some of it.
Brady, any thoughts?
I do have some thoughts on this, and I'm so glad Doug brought this one up. I did listen to most of your radio show yesterday, and I thought you guys, as well as Dennis, the voice, Jackson.
The voice.
If you guys haven't listened to the radio show, there's a reason he's known as the voice. The guy's got one of the best baritones of all time. I wish my voice could go that deep and sound that articulate. That being said, you guys did a really good job on this subject, and I called in and I asked you guys both to weigh in on the Kentucky resolutions, and you did a really good job on that, both of you, Alan and Doug. And I thought it was the best radio show you guys have done in a long time. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I caught almost the whole show. That being said, you look at this whole, and it thrills me to no end to see nullification and states' rights trending on Google. People are having this conversation. Other states are standing up. They're actually reading the Constitution, and I love that part of it. But something about it doesn't quite smell right. You got Governor Abbott. Took him 3+ years to do anything about the border, and now this guy's all of a sudden, during an election year, he's standing up for states' rights and fighting off the invasion that's been going on for 3 years. Okay, that's kind of odd. But I guess I have this note of caution, watching how it just seems too good to be true. And you've got these convoys leaving states like California, and some groups that I'm in contact with or help to organize these convoys to drive through and help support people at the border. Right now, Texas is really defending about 2.5 miles of the border and this border's thousands of miles long, and the Texas border's hundreds of miles long. And there was a video, and I may even play this here in a second. If I can probably track it down real quickly. But there's this guy who basically drove a mile from there and showed all the open spots in the border, a mile or two from where all this, big rigmarole is going on there. So it seems to me there may be a lot of political theater going on, and it kind of smells like a trap. And
this is the first stance, though, from Texas's point of view, I think, though, and hopefully it would then push the idea, based on what you said, that more wall needs to go up, more needs to be covered. But I am curious. So the political theater, are you thinking this is something that the federal government's going to play twisty on, or what?
This is me being paranoid. But at the end of the day, they need some kind of a false flag. They are not winning the battle. The whole border crisis is a negative on the establishment right now. The Democrats are getting their butts kicked by their own party on the subject. Nobody likes the open border. We have an election year, and I guess my paranoia says to me that they really don't want the election to play out fairly. And ever since Joe Biden issued Executive Order 14019, where he basically instructed every single federal agency, all of them, to initiate voter registration initiatives. That includes the Border Patrol. Who are they going to register as voters? But the entire federal government for the last 2 years has been involved in the election process, unconstitutionally, I might add. This has been going on for 2 years. And to me, it scares the hell out of me that they're going to create a false flag to nationalize the elections or federalize the elections. That's my worst case scenario of what's going on here.
Well, it has been mentioned that the administration would like to nationalize the National Guard, which also would be very unconstitutional and against the 1903 Dick Act. But so now nationalize the election, and this is just my own thinking based on what you said, or make sure there's an event that creates such a danger that the election maybe has to be put on hold.
Something along those lines. These are, tinfoil me worrying about what's going on. I am very concerned for the people involved in these convoys. I don't know where the upside is to it. What are you actually going to accomplish? I mean, what are you supporting?
Well, Tim Donnelly and the Minutemen, that was going on back during the Obama years. And Tim Donnelly ran for governor for California. What he did is he took guys to the border, man, here in California, and it was unorganized militia standing there armed. That's, I think, what we might see coming, that kind of thing. Do you believe that it could create a standoff? Because every time there's a standoff, it seems like the federal government backs down. The BLM did when it came to Bundy Ranch, and they usually did when it came to the Minutemen. So I understand the paranoia, but at the same time, historically, the left are a bunch of cowards. When we push, they tuck tail and hide typically.
Well, let me play this quick video. It's only a few minutes, and we don't have to go through the whole thing. Alan, cut me off when you want to. But this thing has gone somewhat viral today, and I think it's important to understand that this Eagle Pass area that they're fighting over is a really small fraction of the Texas border, and it doesn't make sense for a 2.5 mile stretch of border to be the constitutional crisis we're waiting on. There's something afoot here. It doesn't smell right.
Did you say this is going viral?
Well, a lot of people are watching it.
Do I need a vaccine?
No. Okay. I think, Alan, I'm a pretty big believer that you can make your own informed decision on whether you can have a vaccine against this video.
Okay.
All right, let me just play this. I think I've got the sound. Can you hear it?
No sound yet.
All right, let me do it again. I might have not clicked it.
Click the sound little guy.
I thought I did, but I might have missed it. I'm not very good with this mouse.
Well, that's because you're a hamster.
Yeah, hamsters and mice don't get along as well as we should.
Well, and also he's trying to reach for it from the wheel, so.
There you go.
Wow. What? Half a mile. What's going on, guys? I know y'all come to my page because of the comedy, and I just
Great
play
beard
around on here. And I don't get political very often. Sometimes I have some things to say about things. I live in Texas. I was just in Eagle Pass, and I've got some videos I need to show you guys. Because you're watching the news, whether it's CNN or Fox, you're letting these news media idiots get you riled up against each other. Let me show you some videos that might just calm your ass down and make you turn off the TV. Watch this. All right, so this is the wall, you know, the fence that we put up. And they put up a secondary fence because they opened the gates. There's some armed guards with some pretty serious weaponry. You know, pretty intimidating, right? Here's your razor wire in between the two bridges that are in the entrances into Mexico and also the entrance to Eagle Pass. There's some Hummers, some more guys, right? We're protecting, you know, we're keeping them out. This is 0.5 miles from that area. 0.5 miles from where they set up their cameras. 0.5 miles from where they have all the people there. And it's right down the road. I left this long to show you just how short of a drive it is for us to get to a point where all that we just saw does not matter, and they're just getting you riled up against each other because it's election time. And right about here is where you're going to see it. What's that? Where are the armed guards? Where are the AR-15s? Where's the razor wire? Where's the gates? That's half a mile from where the media is blowing up that Texas versus the feds, that we're having this big battle. So that was one gate. That was the very first gate that I saw. We drove down a little bit more. There's one. It had a chain on it. So you keep driving down the road. You got Trump's wall doing its job. This one has never even had a gate. So to me, doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, libertarian. It doesn't matter what you are, and you're posting about this Texas versus the feds, and we could have a civil war. I'm telling you right now, if a civil war breaks out, it's not because there's something good to fight over. It's because it's election time. It is because the news media is corrupt and you need to turn the TV off. I don't care what news media you watch. Just go down there and look yourself. Go look. The things that they are saying that the feds and Texas are fighting about is a stretch that is not even a mile. How long is the border? They can just walk right over, and those gates keep going and going and going and going. I know you're thinking, well, just two gates. No, they're all open.
So you guys get the point.
And so much of it, you know, once again, I think this battle right now is just point A, and we'll see what happens. But you have a federal administration that's opened these gates. The state only has so many personnel, but they got to make a stand somewhere, and so they're making a stand at this park.
Well, my concern is that they aren't making a stand. I think this is more about optics.
In other words, you're saying both sides are teamed up for the visual.
Well, I don't trust the Governor Abbott. You know, for one stretch, it took him 3+ years to actually do anything about a wide open border. And even if he does shut it down for the entire state of Texas, they can just do this. You know, they can just move the crossing to, you know, New Mexico, Arizona, California, which they are doing, of course. So what actually is in play here? And I love, you know, you guys know I love the fact that we're talking about nullification, states' rights, but it bothers me what the pretense is and where it's being initiated from. And if it's coming from Austin, Texas, it's not trustworthy. This is Governor Abbott. He has never been one of us. The entire 3+ years of letting the border be porous, and now he's making a stand. You know, what changed?
Well, he hasn't been hard left, but he's definitely not one of us. He's somewhere in between, and I agree there. I also know that when Trump began having the wall built, only a small fraction of it got put up. Yes, our border is porous. Have you ever driven along the border there near El Paso, just east of El Paso? Have you ever driven along it there in New Mexico? It's yes, yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to argue the point, and that video is definitely 100% accurate. Um, I'm hoping, and I think that's what it comes down to, is we all hope that this battle that's going on is genuine. That Texas is trying to make a stand somewhere. Obviously, you don't have the personnel. The thing is, unless we start using some technology and we get more wall up, you really can't stop it. They'll just pick another spot. And we have an administration that's literally calling people in. And that's why it's so important for us to make sure we get someone like Donald J. Trump back in office. And I know people are doubting that because the numbers have to overcome the cheat. We know that they cheat. We know that the fraud is going on. But he is the one guy. He is the one guy that loves this country and believes that the crossings need to stop. Whether or not Abbott's on our side, I don't know, but I'm sure happy that nullification is being brought up. I'm happy that it looks like there's a stand. Whether or not you have something there, I don't know, and I'm not going to argue about it. But I am happy that state sovereignty and nullification is in the conversation.
Yeah, and like I said, both of those subjects are trending on Google Trends. I looked it up yesterday. It's and that matters. Yeah. We want to be having these conversations because we need to be.
Right.
People
I
need
think
to
I'll make a few comments.
Go ahead, Alan. Jump in. It's your show, buddy.
Number one, you brought this up. Do you know how long the border between Texas border is on the southern end?
About 1,000 miles, something like that.
1,254 miles.
Yeah.
And this idea of protecting that line in arguing with the federal government about it doesn't make sense to me. And we've talked about this on the radio yesterday. Okay, and I use this as an analogy and not picking on any state, but if you look on the map of the U.S. and you look at Kansas, Kansas is surrounded by 4 states. So Kansas has 4 borders, kind of a rectangle. On the Kansas side of that line, who's responsible for that border? Isn't it Kansas? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Not the other states. If the federal government wants to say that it gets to control the most outer line of the U.S. along the Texas state, give it to them. Move in 10 yards, 100 yards, quarter mile. I don't care. At some point, we're talking about the state of Texas. And the state of Texas can control its own property. You don't have to argue over the first 10 feet. And they can put up whatever kind of barricades they want, whatever kind of fences, no gates. This is something the people can do. Just do it. Stop arguing with the federal government about what it's not doing. And just shut it down. This is more than just nullification. This is taking action, which gets you to the end result, which is we're not allowing people to cross into our state that are coming here not legally. Done. Thoughts?
We have a political party that's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure they are the only party, that it is a uniparty. I mean, we already feel like it's uniparty because the establishment of the Republican Party drinks from the same trough. But they're not done. They've got to stop what little opposition is left. And they're going to do everything they can to make sure they get as many people in this country. They also want to destroy this country. They believe in the Cloward-Piven move. And one of the ways that you destroy it is with invaders. And nobody's willing to listen to that part of it, unfortunately. This is all planned. This is all a part of the plan. The whole point is the destruction of our country, and any pushback against these people, the left, be they Democrat or Republican, any pushback is welcome. And so that's why I support what I see. But that said, I do recognize once again what Brady was saying as a concern. That said, also you're right from a constitutional standpoint. The state sovereign territory belongs to the state. But you've got a federal government believes it is at the top of the food chain. Think about this: they're dictating to us that territory belongs to the state, but they're dictating to us that we have to get a federal permit for mineral rights. Well, if the property on top belongs to us, doesn't the property underneath? We're dealing with a national system who thinks it has control over everything rather than a federal republic. And
that gets down
any
to
pushback is good.
That gets down to what I've written about, which is federal land grab.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about it before.
Yeah.
You got any other? I think you have one other topic, Doug, that you want to talk about, because I think we've wrapped this topic.
Well, let's hand it over.
Before we move on, anything in chat?
80% of Democrats vote illegal.
Quite a bit of people don't trust Abbott. That's for sure.
Okay.
We got a few Texans in our chat, and they know the lay of the land there. Ken Paxton appears to be fantastic. We start talking about who Donald Trump, when he wins the election in 2024, is going to name for his new attorney general. Ken Paxton should be on the short list. They tried it. The establishment tried to take him out.
Yeah, they tried to recall him for a reason, or well, not recall him, but they did try to do it legally.
And he's coming back fighting. I mean, look, I haven't done a total deep dive into Paxton's entire background, anything like that, but some of the stuff that he's standing up for, stuff that we would agree with, and he appears to be one of the better attorney generals we have out there. So,
anybody that makes the
better than Kamala,
just by a bit, just by a bit.
You gotta like anybody that makes the blood squirt that far out of the eyes of the left.
There you go. Did you want to talk about presidential immunity?
I was going to bring that up, but I wanted to give Brady the opportunity also to, if he had anything else he wanted to talk about.
No, I'm good. I brought up the last couple of topics, so I'll pass it on.
All right. So I actually have been talking about presidential immunity quite a bit of late, and I finally decided to actually sit down and put it in words. So if you go to politicalpistachio.com right now, or if you go to douglasvgibbs.com and go to blog in the link bar, either way, you'll get there. I wrote an article about presidential immunity today. I also sent it off to different publishers. I've got a couple small papers that are going to publish it, and Canada Free Press published it today.
Wow. Way to go.
Oh, thank you. So here's the thing about presidential immunity, because, see, we've had these 91 charges launched at President Trump, and he says, well, I've got immunity. If you've got, this is what Trump said, and he was right. If you've got a president who's afraid after he leaves office that he's going to be charged for his actions as president, then you've got a president that can't do his job. So, and it's funny because, I know the Constitution backwards and forwards, but I never really looked into it before because immunity was just never a concern. It was never an issue. Suddenly it is. And I knew exactly where to go once I got thinking about it, because I remembered what it says. And I just wanted to make sure one particular word was there that I thought was this word called convicted, and it is. And so I want to read from you. I want to read for you the last clause of Article 1, Section 3, because this is what lays out immunity. And now remember, this is in Article 2. This establishes the executive branch. So this is specifically regarding the President of the United States. Judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted, there's that word, shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. And the way I've been teaching this all along before this came up was that, and this is still the truth, is that an impeachment is a political trial. When someone is convicted of an impeachment, they're not led out of the courtroom or out of the Senate in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit. It is a political trial trying to determine if the person, if the person committed what they said, and then if they did, if the Senate convicts them, they are removed from office and unable to hold office. But it's a political trial. The criminal part of it cannot be pursued until after they're out of office. But according to this, in order to go after them criminally, they have to be convicted first through impeachment. So the good news is President Donald J. Trump was never convicted in either of his impeachments, so he has full immunity. Defamation we'll get to that. True Patriot asked a question. I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so his actions as president of the United States that had to do with his office as president of the United States or any other thing while he's president, he is immune.
Question.
Okay?
Question.
That's the good news. The bad news is that if you don't catch Joe Biden with his garbage and impeach him and convict him, after he's out of office, he has the immunity too. Go ahead.
Well,
what was your question?
Okay.
Alan, can I jump in before that real quick? Just super quick.
Ahead. Go ahead.
Most of the crimes that we think Biden's guilty of happened before he ever.
Yeah, this is true. And he doesn't have immunity for vice president and Senate.
And he certainly doesn't have it for what happened between 2016 2020. Right. And there was an awful lot of the accusations happened when he held no office. So let's not think he's getting off the hook.
All right, ask your question, then I want to address what True Patriot asked.
So to be clear, in the political realm, you have to be charged or
Impeached.
Indicted. Impeached, quote unquote, charged. Then you have to be tried.
Mm-hmm.
Have to actually have a trial. And at the end of that trial, you have to be found guilty.
Right. Yeah, need to be convicted, and that trial is conducted by the U.S. Senate.
And that's a 3-step process to get to the point in the political realm. You're out of office, you ain't coming back.
And now you've been convicted of that. Now, because you've been convicted through the political trial, then you can be charged criminally.
Yeah. So it's impeach, it is tried, it is convicted.
Right.
You have to have all.
That last part has never been met.
You have to have all 3 pieces.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have all 3 pieces, then it's a moot point. Didn't happen. Correct?
Right.
Okay. I just wanted to clear that up.
On the defamation trial, this Jean Carroll case, that one's a little bit more interesting. He has indicated he did not, do what she claims, raped her and all that, while in office and outside of office. And so this particular immunity is not going to count. But here's the thing. So he's guilty. Well, first of all, what is defamation? Defamation is saying, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is lying.
Yeah, but it's lying about something that's true.
Well,
but we don't know if the rape is true because it's never been tried. So saying he didn't do it is not lying about something that's true because the truth has not been determined. Therefore, it can't be defamation yet because we don't know if it's true. So in other words, what they've decided to do is he's guilty of rape, therefore it's defamation, even though he's never been convicted of being guilty of rape.
So you skipped over required step 1 to get to step 2,
right?
And they took the position that they wanted from step 1, even though it was never proven.
And realize this woman, and we talked about this yesterday on KMET AM 1490.
1490.
And she has like half a dozen or more other accusations against other people of rape. her babysitter's boyfriend. And I mean, she's got this whole long list. She's, what would you say, a habitual accuser? I guess you could say. Something wrong here, don't you think?
Doug, I may have missed it, but I don't know if you guys talked about the fact that the judge in that case was the former mentor of E. Jean Carroll's lawyer.
Yeah, I just came across that this morning. We did not talk about that on the show yesterday. I just came across that little factoid today, and that's a good point too. The whole thing should be a mistrial, number one, and number two, how can you find someone guilty of lying about something that's factual when whether or not that thing is factual has not been determined?
And how do you rule that he's never even allowed to defend himself? They basically cut off every single argument, said you're not allowed to defend yourself, period. It's going to be caught. The fact that judge...
It flies in the face of our system.
The fact that judge didn't recuse based on the relationship with the lawyer, I mean, on its face, the first legitimate appeals court's going to look at that and say, no, stop, all over, gone, bye-bye. It's not even close to being something he should have been able to adjudicate in any way, shape, or form.
But why would you absolutely take the case to begin with when what it's based on has never been determined?
Right.
The case should have been, no, we ain't starting this process at all because there's no guilt that has been assigned.
Defamation is not possible because the item that he is being accused of lying about has not been proven to be fact.
And if he's not lying, then she's guilty of defamation.
But because there's an election coming up, and there are enough people that are so uninformed, they're going to say, "Oh, well, Trump was accused of rape. He was convicted of rape, and therefore I can never vote for him." And that's going to move, 1% to 2% of the vote, and that's why they do it. They push from every angle.
Yeah, the accusation is all that matters. But hey, he needs also 83 million. Here's the interesting thing about the 83 million, and I don't know in this case. But in other cases where there's been smaller amounts, like $106,000, stuff like that, I've seen over and over and over where someone will win a case, they'll win the award, but they can never get the money out of the person for various reasons, and the courts don't have an enforcement arm to force the person to pay up, and if the person that is supposed to receive the money doesn't have the resources to ensure it happens, they're not going to get their money. So I'm wondering, if Trump can just basically tell you, okay, fine, you got your verdict, but you're not getting the money out of me.
Well, the problem there, and I get that, it goes back to Andrew Jackson, that the courts made their decision, now let them enforce it.
Mm-hmm.
The problem there is this is a New York court, and they can actually impact his businesses in the state. They can seize them. So they do have some jurisdiction over his ability to do commerce in New York State. So he does not have the ability to just say, thumb his nose at it. So he'll appeal.
Well, he's going to appeal. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, of course. But it's not a situation where he can just say, yeah, good luck trying to enforce it, because they actually do have the ability to enforce. They do have that ability. New York State courts can keep him from conducting commerce in the state of New York.
That would put a lot of people out of business.
I would force him to sell it, probably at a value higher than the courts admitted it was worth in the first place. But that irony will be lost on them. But the whole thing's a farce. It was from day one. The process is the punishment.
Well, that's the point, and they couldn't get him to misspell potatoes, so they had to find other ways to get him.
Before we move on, anything in chat?
Well, it's funny because Big Kahuna said, too, that the judge has a sketchy history, not just the mentor thing, but there's even more to it than that. I don't have all the details. I read it this morning. Don't remember all the details, but yeah. Now, that said, Paula Jones, according to Dynamex, got 800,000, 83 million. But there's no bias here.
Well, how did they come up with that $83 million number? That's the fun part.
Well,
Because she was not that successful of an author. Apparently,
I
people don't want to pay a lot of money to read the books of people who paint rocks and trees blue.
I asked that question yesterday, which is because apparently defamation is hurting her book sales. So how many books would she have to reasonably sell to be able to make up that 83 million? We didn't get that number. And has she ever done it before?
So
Don't know.
this actually segues in. This brings up an interesting conversation, which is right in line with the nature of this show.
Wait a minute. We have a nature?
We do.
Okay.
We bash on hypocrisy, climate change, and unconstitutional stuff. I think that would probably fit. No, I had this conversation on social media, and someone wanted to argue with me about, can Trump get a fair trial in New York? Can he get a quote unquote jury of peers? And the person who wanted to respond to me, I talked about how when we talked about the jury of peers, and this is something I got from Doug, and so I want you to expand upon it, but the high level version of it is your peers are people in your community who knew you. And if you can convince that jury that you're guilty, you're probably guilty. The people that knew your character, had known you for decades or however long, you're probably guilty. And someone else came back and said, well, no, the original, the peerage, well, and I go, no. You have to go back to the peerage.
All the way back to the Saxons.
No, it goes back further than that. It goes back to the, why am I drawing a blank? The Magna Carta, who drew a distinction between the peers of nobility. There is something called a peerage. And you compare that to the British Bill of Rights from 1687. Do I have that right? There's a difference between a jury of peers and a peerage.
1689, you were close.
Okay, thank you. I'm blowing those years lately. Sorry, I guess I'm getting old. But at the end of the day, Alan and Doug, go off on what a jury of peers actually is or should be and what it's become. Because this is important, because obviously you cannot get a fair trial in D.C. or New York City.
It's funny, too, because that was the main reason that Nixon resigned, because he was being told, you're not going to get a fair trial if you get impeached and then wind up in criminal court. And if you get impeached, and convicted of that impeachment, you can't get pardoned, and then they will go after you criminally. So that was one of the reasons Nixon resigned, is because he knew he wasn't getting a fair trial. They were not going to find an unbiased jury. When it comes to the history of this, the idea of a jury of your peers is the people that are, know you in your neighborhood. They are your peers. This unbiased part was supposed to be the judge more so than the jury. That said, it's funny how in America an unbiased jury has always been such a big deal until now. In Britain, you serve on a jury through a lottery, and you cannot be removed for being biased unless the lawyer on the other side catches your bias during the trial, then petitions for your removal. But in America, we go out of our way, aside from Trump's trials anyway, out of our way to make sure we have an unbiased jury. If you've served on jury duty, you know what I'm talking about. It is a big deal. You'll get, I've been trying to get on juries my whole life. And the moment they realize I have half a brain, first of all, they don't want me anyway, because it's also harder to convince someone who's got half a brain to move in their direction. But both sides, interview the jury, the jurors, and all that jazz. And there are many cases in our history where it is determined an unbiased jury cannot be achieved. Therefore, they're going to change the venue. But see, that doesn't serve the narrative here. That doesn't serve the goal here. So unbiased jury goes out the window. Getting back to the jury of his peers, he's not even going to get close to that. Once again, the idea was that the people who knew you, the people you worked with, the people who were aware of your day-to-day comings and goings, those were your peers from the original definition.
Well,
Alan, do you want to add anything?
Say what?
Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think so. According to Google, a jury of one's peers stay in the United States refers to the right to a trial by an impartial jury chosen from a cross-section of the community. It goes on to say that the Sixth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution guarantees this right. And I thought, let me check out the Sixth Amendment. It's not that long. You ready?
Go ahead.
In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense.
And once again,
so they don't talk
about impartial jury here, but yeah, the word peers is not there. Is that what you're looking at?
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's about being, excuse me, it's about being impartial.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how in the United States, and it ought to be, it's a big deal about being an impartial jury. The idea of a jury of peers, what we're talking about, goes all the way back to the Saxons and what this is founded upon. The idea of a jury of one's peers goes back to that. Yes, they use the word impartial, which is supposed to be, your jury of your peers is supposed to be an impartial jury. There's supposed to be people that aren't going to be partial. But nonetheless, going back to what I was saying earlier, how the United States, because of this, goes out of its way to make sure that jury is impartial. We go through great pains. It's like I said, in Britain, it's a lottery, and impartiality has to be caught during the case by the opposing lawyer. Here, we go through great pains to try to ensure an impartial jury and an impartial judge. Of course, in Trump's case, neither one is the case.
Well, according to more research, jury of peers, P-E-E-R-S, I know you're going to find this surprising, but it dates back to the Magna Carta. Oh, my goodness.
Which is based on Saxon law.
At that point, the provision ensured that fellow nobles tried members of the nobility rather than the king judging them.
Right.
The phrase more accurately means a jury of fellow citizens.
And they defined citizens a little differently back then. One of the interesting things about the Magna Carta is that its purpose was basically for the other nobles. They were asserting their own rights in front of the king, so the king wasn't all powerful. They weren't worried about the common citizens so much.
Well, yes and no. The barons originally in the writing of the Magna Carta basically only addressed the nobility and the barons in it, and then they later on, before they presented it to the king, changed the language to freemen. So in other words, they did include everybody who was in the citizenship who were free, going beyond just the nobility. But the main purpose was the nobility. Absolutely.
Doug, how was freeman addressed in 1240, right?
Yeah, the thing is, if you were considered a subject, you weren't counted as a freeman.
Yeah, you had to actually own property. You had to actually own property. Is that correct?
Typically, yes.
There was a fuzzy definition, but I think it was property owners were considered to have rights and nobody else did.
And more often than not, those were nobility.
Yeah, well,
and actually, and even then, that definition is even fuzzy because there really were no property owners because it was the king's realm.
Yeah, well, the Magna Carta is one of the most important documents in history, but there's a lot of asterisks with that statement.
But the thing is, with the Magna Carta, it was a beginning. It wasn't the end. And imagine what it took. Granted, they were being very self-interested,
Mm-hmm.
but they began the process of telling the supreme authority, bite me.
Well, they were telling the king, "You're not above the law," and that the parliament and the parliament is just as important voice as you. And you're not above the law, and you can't dictate to the parliament. You can't shut down the parliament like he was doing. And that, so the basic freedoms were part of the Magna Carta, and as it should have been, it was an absolutely important. It was absolutely important in its impact on not only British society, but also on the writing of the Declaration of Independence and Constitution. Its influence was there.
Well, interesting enough, by the way, it was 1215 AD.
1215 is when the Magna Carta was, yeah. I thought you said Declaration of Rights earlier.
Well, no, I said Magna. I was guessing 1240, but I got it wrong. It was 1215.
Oh.
What's funny about that is the dominant maritime empire at the time was still Venice, and it would be 2 centuries later that the Venetians were to marry into the British royal family, and that stuff sort of changed a lot with all that in the next few centuries of the stuff I like to talk about.
Well, let's not forget about how Antwerp actually really became the economic center there for a while.
You're talking about in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was the Venetians first married in the Netherlands, and that came down to the invasion of Venice that was staged by the Holy Roman Empire that was called off at the very last minute. The Venetians realized that their maritime empire needed to have a place that was more defensible than a small island surrounded by swamp. Sure. So they moved the Netherlands first and then England. And that was about a 3-century maneuver. And that's how these are the descendants of the Roman Empire. This is the maritime empires. This goes into some of the stuff I talk about in the deep history stuff I do on my channel, but yeah, it really is the same families.
But here's the thing, the rise, and I'm sorry we're going on a little bit of a tangent here, but the rise of the two are a little bit different. The Venetians, really part of the reason why their rise became a big deal and really what they used as their rise is they basically controlled the path to points east of them in the Mediterranean.
The trade route.
In order to get there, you had to go through them kind of thing, and they controlled that path. But when it came to Antwerp, once it moved to the Dutch, it was really more about using a system that was based on a more free market kind of style system. So to make it sound like the Venetian just transferred over to the Dutch is not necessarily fair, because the rise of the Dutch was largely because of their change in a more free market style.
Okay, so I don't think you're disagreeing with me as saying the same thing, but from a different angle. And Carol Quigley addresses this in Tragedy and Hope, right around chapters like 10 through 15. He talks about this. And if you don't know who Carol Quigley is, he was Bill Clinton's mentor, but don't hold that against him. He was also the historian for the Council of Foreign Relations and had access to documents.
Don't hold that against him either.
Yes, yeah, that one.
Well, the point being about Carol Quigley is he had access to documents none of us will ever see.
Right.
When he wrote this Real History of the World, he got to see writings that nobody will ever see, stuff that will never see the light of day. So his history of the world is something you need to pay attention to.
Right.
Why was he allowed to write Tragedy and Hope?
Well, he wasn't. And that's what's funny about it. They tried to stop it, but he had enough copies out there already by the time he wrote it. When they tried to stop him from doing it, they didn't know he was doing it. So it was already out there by the time they tried to stop it. He just, he was so well known and so much a part of the establishment. And he was such a pure academic that he thought this history had to be out there. So he released so many copies of this, by the time the government or the powers that be wanted to suppress it, it was too late. So for about 10 years, he couldn't get a copy, but now every one of us can order one and read 1,400 pages at our leisure, and you can even get it on an audiobook today. But they did try to suppress it, Alan.
Did he suffer any consequences?
No, he was, he
Too well known?
too well known, too well established, and he didn't really tell any dirty secrets. But his history was, it's like I said, I don't think you can really understand the last 500 years of, human history without reading Carroll Quigley. He talks about stuff in a way that no one else has, and from a different aspect. He speaks from someone who's a historian of the true puppet masters, who I think the Council of Foreign Relations, I think, are as close to the seat of power as we'll ever know. So,
Since you brought him up,
Carroll Quigley, Oliver, just look up Tragedy and Hope, 1,400 pages, and the audiobook is wonderful if you're ever going to drive across the country.
I'd like to read a quote I have in my Fed Ed pamphlet. This is from Carroll Quigley, and it's kind of to the point as we're coming to the end of the excuse me, near the end. So I'll read this. The powers of financial capitalism had another far-reaching aim, nothing less than to create a world system of financial control in private hands, able to dominate the political system of each country and the economy of the world as a whole. This system was to be controlled in a feudalist fashion by the central banks of the world, acting in concert by secret agreements arrived at in frequent private meetings and conferences. The apex of the system was to be the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, a private bank owned and controlled by the world's central banks, which were themselves private corporations. Sound about right?
Sounds about right.
Doug? Sound pretty scary? Okay, that's 1966. You know the name David Rockefeller?
Mm-hmm.
Well, all too well.
Okay. You know he wrote a book called Memoirs, published in 2002.
I have it.
So do I. I saw this quote allegedly from him out of the book, and to verify it, I actually bought the book. And it didn't take me long to find it. Keep in mind what I just read, which is from Carroll Quigley, okay? This is from David Rockefeller, 2002, his book, Memoirs. For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidences, such as my encounter with Castro, to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interests of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists, and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure. One world, if you will. Doesn't that sound really horrible?
Yep, but he's about to say that it's true.
If that is the charge, I stand guilty and I'm proud of it. So
I have some fun. I don't know if we talk about this last week, Alan, that the NACs, that the Rockefellers and the New York Stock Exchange tried to push through, the national asset companies. Natural asset companies. They got defeated. David Rockefeller got his butt handed to him by public opinion. They are not going to be able to execute their plan this time around.
I think that's wonderful.
It is.
Doug, any thoughts?
No, I've said what I need to say.
Brady, last go round. You have one more topic for us.
I don't. I'd like to wrap up the last one.
Okay, go ahead.
Because it's a topic near and dear to all of us. We were talking about the Venetians and I was talking about the Venetians and how they got to Amsterdam and then London. What's interesting is it was the glory days of Venice. The De Medicis are the ones who created the dual entry accounting system.
I'm going to interrupt. I thought the first person to come up with that was an Italian monk. That's my history.
Yeah, there'll be someone who's employed by the De Medicis, or
Yeah. And because they needed a system to account for what's going on, and it was an Italian monk that came up with the double entry journal entry system.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. It's in the 14th century, and that it really helped Venice and their mercantile empire, which was exported to, as Doug mentioned, Amsterdam, and then, well, not Amsterdam, Antwerp, but the Netherlands, and then eventually into London. But one of the interesting things about history, and Carol Quigley mentions this, is the British ability to do financial engineering gave them a 50-year head start on the rest of Europe when the industrial age came upon us. And that really is why the British Empire became the empire where the sun never set. It was not just their accounting system and their banking system and the what we call it, the common stock, the joint stock system. That's the first joint stock companies came out of the Netherlands, but they immediately got adopted by the English. The British East India Company in 1600 was founded, and by 1666 they became the first private enterprise to ever get the right to mint coin. Before that, it was always the priesthood or the government, and that's a very important thing that happened in 1666. And for you numerologists, yeah, have fun with that. 1666. I find it interesting. That's how the real power of empire took place, and it was based on a bunch of Venetian ideas that were handed down from the Romans. Remember that Rome was a backwater republic before they beat Carthage. Carthage was the mercantile kings of the Mediterranean before Rome finally beat them in the Punic Wars. There's no coincidence that when after World War II, America and our Navy, because we're the only civilized, industrialized country that didn't get bombed in World War II, became the new mercantilist kings of the world. And it's like I said, Carol Quigley addresses all of this stuff, and it's worth reading. So I just wanted to hit those points home.
Well, thank you for that. The interesting thing about it, again, if you want to know more about basic monetary system education, go to my website, feded, feded.us. You can get the first 6 modules or pages free. If you want to buy the whole thing, it's not much more. And this is about basic monetary system education, which is when you understand what it is and how impactful basic bookkeeping is, because nothing happens in our financial world until it hits the bookkeeping department. You can sign all the documents, you can make all the pledges, but it is in bookkeeping that money comes into existence, is added to the supply. The money goes out of existence, goes out of the supply. It is the power of bookkeeping. And what you guys are talking about is, okay, this started in Italy, started in Venice. They figured it out. And during, let's say, the Middle Ages, when they used to have these big trading fairs throughout Europe, and all the big trading families would come together, they would settle their accounts with their own form of money. They didn't use the local money. This is how they were beginning to learn, and did learn very clearly, the power of bookkeeping. If you control the bookkeeping, you control it. Doug, any last thoughts? Topic. I thought you guys had more to chat about, so.
Oh, I always have plenty to chat about, but at the same time, I don't want to dominate things. But the monetary system and bookkeeping and all of that is definitely an important part of it. I'm glad that you brought that up and all of that. We in our news, and it's an amazing thing, because when it comes to the news that's going on right now, it's coming at us so fast that you never know what to talk about, because there's just so much that keeps piling up. I mean, for example, one of the headlines out there right now is Ilhan Omar told the Somali crowd that the U.S. government works for Somalia. For example, New York, I don't even know what to say on that one. Haley donors will be permanently barred from the MAGA camp because of what she's been doing and saying with hers. I mean, the headlines come at you faster than you can beat a stick at it. And it's interesting because it's all over. It is all over control. It is all over the same thing that's been going on since day one. We're not fighting anything new. We're King George, federal government, Venetians. It's all the same team. It's all the same stuff. Different logos, different people, same exact evil that's been plaguing us from day one. The whole reason why the United States was created and the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence were written was against exactly what we're fighting today. This is a long-time enemy, and people ask me all the time, they say, well, when did all this start? And pardon my way of putting it, but my first response usually is it all began with a serpent. We are fighting an eternal enemy, and the players, the logos may be different, but it's the same stuff. And you know what the revolutionaries back during the early American days did? They said enough's enough. We're going to use our numbers and we're going to fight back. Now, originally, there was no intention for it to be what it became, an armed revolution. But they stood against it. They protested. They sent their letters. They did the things that we're doing today. And the only reason why it became an armed revolution is because the other side began that phase of it. So, and I'm a firm believer that as an American, we are headed for conflict. I don't think we should start the conflict. I don't think we will start the conflict. But understand the other side, they're prepared for conflict. Are we prepared for it? I'm not saying start it. I'm saying be prepared for it. Because we're not prepared for the conflict that they're bringing. It's going to end really fast. And so, when we get into these conversations, well, there's a civil war coming, Doug. No, there's not. Civil war is already going on.
Bingo.
You want to add to that since you got all excited when I said exactly what I said?
No, it's fifth generational warfare, the old quote unquote civil war, and it was not a civil war.
No.
It was the war to suppress Southern independence. It was a war of Northern aggression, however you want to call it. What is going on right now? We're dealing with fifth generational warfare, and the first shots were fired as far back as 2016 and maybe before that. You're not going to see North versus South. These states, these wonderful maps we're seeing on the internet showing the states supporting Texas, that is not what the new Civil War is going to look like. The Civil War is going on. It's a war of ideas. It's an intelligence war, and that's why they're censoring us. It's a culture war. Mm-hmm. We need to get back the soul of what it means to be free and independent. And it really comes down, I'll simplify it really simply, is people like us, we believe in individual liberty, and the government exists to protect the rights.
Secure our rights. I would use the word secure, but go ahead.
And you're correct. And thank you for that correction. I agree with that 100%. The government exists to secure our rights. There are other people who think the government exists to create, new rights and give them stuff. But you can't do that without taking away mine and your individual rights. And that's what really the war comes down to. It's collectivism versus individual rights. And that's been going on a long time, but they've been very aggressive at it. And the war part of it started pretty much when Donald Trump came down the escalator. And I'd suggest they did it. It really started when they gave us the Patriot Act after 9/11. This has been going on a long time. It is a war of ideas. It is a cultural war. It is an info war. And we're winning, by the way. And we hope it doesn't become a kinetic war. That's what we're doing here.
I would say that, at least on this property, this began a long time ago. If you want to know how bad it was prior to 1776, check out the Declaration of Independence. If you want to know how bad it was, James Otis, 1760, mentioned him before. He gave about a 5-hour presentation in Boston about why he would no longer, as an attorney for Britain, enforce the writ of assistance, which is just a general search warrant. That's 1760. When they finally got to the Declaration of Independence, this is right before they get to the laundry list of all the bad things. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let these facts be submitted to a candid world. And they go on and on and on about everything they tried to do to get this to change, everything they wrote about. And so do check it out. It's a great list of what they had suffered through, endured, tried to correct, and couldn't get it done.
When you read the list of grievances in the Declaration of Independence, it not only rings true today, same grievances, but it's interesting because there is one line in there that refers to slaves where they're trying to rile up the slaves against us to create, revolution. They're doing the same thing today, but instead of the slaves, it's through illegal aliens.
That was the passage written by Thomas Jefferson near the end of the original draft that got whacked. Yes.
Well, not just that, but one of the lines was actually still there early on in it. That did survive after they took out the 168 words of anti-slavery language. What I'm talking about, see if I can find it here. I'm scanning through it right now. He is
Well, while you do that, Brady, promote yourself and where we can find videos that you do.
The main place to find me and the replays of this show are on my channel on Rumble, which is war_hamster. Been getting a lot. The channel's growing really fast the last few weeks. I've been putting a lot more content up, and these shows have been getting more hits. So it's great. I'm glad people are sharing it and liking it. Also, get me on Twitter at war_hamster1776. There is another person who claims to be a war hamster. That is not me. He's _warhamster. Nice guy. Probably a patriot, but not me. So if you're going to find me on Twitter, it is war_hamster1776. And on True Social, I am war_hamster.
Thank you for that.
A lot more stuff coming soon.
Douglas.
He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us. That's what he's talking about. I still got to download that video that now has expired. If you can send it to me again, that'd be great because I've been so busy I hadn't a chance to do it. Warhamster and I actually did a video together not too long ago. Go to his Rumble page to watch it. I am Douglas V Gibbs, douglasvgibbs.com, Mr. Constitution, and I've got a new book coming out in the next couple of weeks on early American history. 1,600
hits on that video as of today, Doug, and that's like 8 days old.
And I haven't even put it on mine yet.
That's a record on my channel, the show that Doug and I did a week ago Friday.
You know what? I wonder if maybe we should start doing more together. You think?
No.
I could probably put up with you once a week. I don't know.
What a brave hamster you are. Alan Myers here, FedEd, FEDED.us. Saturdays, 1 to 3 p.m. West Coast time. You can find us on the web, radio, real radio, KMET 1490 AM, Central America, Constitution Radio, and of course here on Sundays. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to the chat. Gentlemen, appreciate you being on the show.